Are we good to go? Can you hear me? Okay, good. Nope, hold on. All right, I am going to call to order our Tuesday, January 14th, 2025 Board of Selectmen meeting to order, and we will begin with, well, let's do roll call first. Eric here.
Kim, sorry, Kim, aye.
Don, aye.
All right, and we will begin with the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So before I get started with the announcements, I'm going to wish everybody Happy New Year. We're in 2025. Coming up to the most exciting time of the year, the budget season, and this should be a fun year for that, and we'll be discussing that later tonight. This meeting is recorded by the local scene. Anyone intending to make an audio or video recording of this meeting should notify the chair at this time. And seeing nobody. Financial assistance applications are available on the town's website or by calling the Selectmen's office. For anyone interested in volunteering, we have several vacancies on various committees and boards. To see a complete list of the openings, please visit our website at kingstonma.gov. Also, check our website for additional events or notices at www.kingstonma.gov. Couple announcements. We have our town meeting April 26th of 2025, and the town election will be May 17th. Those dates have recently changed. Were you going to say something? Okay. Before we get into the water department memo regarding rate increase, are we doing this before open forum?
We just wanted to include the letter in the board packet, so those who aren't water customers knew what the water commissioners have sent out notifying the water customers that they have adopted a rate increase. So it's more for informational.
Okay. Okay. Do we need to discuss it?
No.
Okay.
You don't need to. It's up to you.
Okay. Before we move on, does anybody else have any announcements? Any other board members? Okay. At this point, before we get started, we will do open forum. So if anybody's here to address the board, you're welcome to step up to the mic. Or if anybody online that wanted to speak. Doesn't look like it. Number one. All right. So we have a few appointments tonight. First one is presentation of proposed snow plowing on unaccepted road policy. Our town planner, Valerie Massard, is recommending an update to the policy for plowing unaccepted roads in Kingston. The policy was accepted on August 29th of 2023, and we have an updated draft policy for the board's consideration. Valerie, did you want to speak to this?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Valerie Massard, Town Planner. We've been looking at the snowplow policy and talking with a lot of different property owners over the last couple of years. And one of the things we've been advising everyone is the policy that we have, which is after 2020, no new roads that were constructed in town that are not accepted ways would be plowed. And that's been something that we've explained to every single development, every developer for these years. And we were asked to find that in writing, and we started looking. And what we found was in all of our investigations in the memo there, and Trish did a lot of research into the minutes of the Selectmen, it was right before COVID, there was a committee that was set up to look into a possible policy on snow plowing. And this question of discontinuing accepting new roads into the plowing was something that had come up and was being discussed. And it doesn't look like the issue stayed at the top of the radar as COVID came back out and we were able to come back to work. But the decision was made by Mr. Coulter as the town administrator clearly to Mr. Basler that was the policy. So what we've realized is we need to encode that, and so we're coming to you to say that it's understood. Those streets are known that they're not plow roads, and we just wanted to make sure we buttoned everything up and didn't leave this behind.
Okay, so right now, I mean, there's a few roads that are here. Timber Ridge Lane, Captain Jones Way, Harrisbrook Circle, Charles Drive, Nava Landing, Coy Pond Estates, Turtle Pine Village, and Wapping Road 40B, not yet named, new construction. We're not
plowing those roads because they were finished
After
2020 and after.
Okay. So really, we're just looking at adding this, this one line at the top where it says unaccepted private ways constructed in 2020 or later are not eligible for snow removal. All right?
Right, that is the policy, and it's just to put it in writing.
Okay. Any questions, comments from the board?
I just have one question. So number 8 on the policy states that the private roads prior to the 15th will be inspected, but it doesn't have the date. I thought we had a date that it was going to be posted to the website. Should we add that? I don't remember what the date was.
I think it was November 1st.
Yeah, I thought so too.
Do we want to add that in
Sure.
and to be posted to the website?
And that has to do, just
With
for
the-
everyone's sake, that has to do with the date that we let everybody know, hey, you've met the criteria for plowing if you're already eligible.
Yeah, so I think that was in
Different
the
time.
letter that we sent out, but it just wasn't in here. Yeah,
Yeah, that's a good point and worth codifying as well.
yeah. I would agree. Do we need to wait for that change to be added in, or can we vote it?
You could vote it.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Tyler, do you have anything?
That was a good catch. Thank you,
No?
Missy.
Yeah, thank you. Don, any questions or comments?
Nope.
All right. If anybody would like to make a motion,
I move to approve the policy for plowing unaccepted roads presented this evening as amended to include the by November 1st date on
No.
item 8.
notification.
And if I, maybe just to clarify, for those who might be watching, the November 1st date is the date that the property owner, so to speak, or the road owner, has to make the improvements that have been identified by Streets, Trees, and Parks to the roads, or they risk not having them be plowed during that upcoming winter season.
Right, so to be clear, that amendment would be, the sentence would read, the homeowners will be required to make repairs by November 1st.
Again, I think it's the property owner, which
Property
typically
owner.
isn't the homeowner.
Okay, well, it says homeowner, so maybe we change that as well. Property owner.
Sure.
Okay. Second.
All right, do I have a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor, Eric, aye.
Tyler, aye.
Kim, I.
Missy, aye.
Don, aye.
All right, excellent. Next, we are looking to authorize the police chief to make conditional offers to 2 patrol candidates to fill 2 open positions. We do have a memo in our packet, and the chief is here to address it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, honorable members, Mr. Hickey, Ms. Tucker. I'm looking for authorization to tender a conditional offer of employment to both candidates and then a tentative offer once they successfully pass those things, which I'm sure they will. Both candidates are here tonight. Mr. Kevin Carlson, if you could stand up, so you can be seen by the board in the fancy blue suit. Candidate number 1. Candidate number 2, Matthew Bennett, in the fancy gray suit. Mr. Carlson is a Kingston resident. He was raised in Plymouth. He's employed by Beth Israel Deaconess as a security officer. He comes highly recommended by his current employers. I personally spoke to a guy there that I worked with a long time ago who I know. So I'm assured that we're making a good choice with both candidates. But he was described as an outstanding employee. He was given progressive responsibilities, training, de-escalation consistent with what we do. He's the highest ranking candidate that signed the civil service certification. He performed well during his candidate interview. His responses were those of an experienced and mature adult. Mr. Bennett is a Kingston resident, was raised in this community. He's a recent graduate of Colby Sawyer College. He did his internship with us during the summer, so we got an extra close look at him. So, he receives an extra modicum of approval. He was active and he was engaging during his internship. He was eager to learn about the business of policing. I gave him some additional homework assignments concerning the Bill of Rights. He did a good job at completing that. He's currently working at Beth Israel Deaconess, and I have no problem cherry-picking people from that hospital to join the Kingston Police Department. If anybody has any questions for me, about the candidates or about the two-step process that I communicated with you on, I'm happy to answer them.
Any questions from the board? No? All right, would anybody like to make a motion?
I move the board authorize Chief Holmes to tender both conditional and tentative offers of employment to Kevin Carlson and Matthew Bennett, consistent with the terms in the letter, on behalf of the Board of Selectmen, and report back periodically as to their progress.
Second.
All right, all those in favor, Eric, aye.
Tyler, aye.
Kim, aye.
Missy, aye.
Don, aye.
Welcome aboard, gentlemen.
Congratulations.
Yeah, congrats.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. All right, 6:15, we're early, so I think we're gonna move on to our additional items. Acceptance of donation for.
I move the Board of Selectmen
There
accept
you
the
go.
following donations, $50 from Elizabeth Smart for
Do I
the
have a
Council on
second?
Aging.
Second.
All right, all those in favor, Eric, aye.
Tyler, aye.
Kim, aye.
Missy, aye.
Don, aye.
All right, that passed unanimously. We can do the budget in 5 minutes, right? All right, maybe not. We'll go on to number 3. Acceptance of resignation from Affordable Housing Trust and Community Preservation Committee.
I move the Board of Selectmen accept the resignation from Nathan Hedberg from the Affordable Housing Trust as well as Community Preservation Committee effective immediately.
Second.
All those in favor, Eric, aye.
Tyler, aye.
Kim, aye.
Missy, aye.
Don, aye.
And to be clear, he moved.
Right, he moved out of town.
And thank you, Nathan, if you're watching this for some
Yeah.
reason, for your service. We very much appreciate your dedication.
Absolutely. All right, we'll move on to number 4, appointment of streets, trees, and parks, CDL driver labor position.
I move the Board of Selectmen appoint William Duggan to the position of CDL driver laborer position, a grade 3, step 6, non-exempt position as part of the Kingston Town Employee Union labor with anticipated start date of January 27, 2025, consistent with the terms in the offer letter.
Second.
All those in favor, Eric, aye.
Tyler, aye.
Kim, aye.
Missy, aye.
Don, aye.
Excellent. We are moving on to meeting minutes. Would somebody like to make a motion?
I move the Board of Selectmen approve the open session meeting minutes of December 17th, 2024.
Second.
All those in favor, Eric, aye.
Tyler, aye.
Kim, aye.
Missy, aye.
Don, aye.
All right, unanimous. Wow, we're moving.
So he's going to have to
Pretty
do the
quickly.
budget.
Or you could do the town administrator report if you think that's quicker.
Sure, it is quick. The Capital Planning Committee, excuse me, will begin meeting to review the fiscal 26 capital improvement plan tomorrow night, January 15th. The committee meets every 2 weeks on Wednesdays, through the mid-February. The Finance Committee is meeting the off Wednesdays that the Capital Planning Committee doesn't meet. Their meetings will go every other week until sometime in April. The Finance Director and I are planning on attending both meetings. So every Wednesday night, we're tied up until sometime in March or April, basically. I don't have any projects to update anybody with. Just to let everyone know, a personnel update, where the subcommittee is going to be interviewing Director of Elder Affairs candidates beginning next week. I hope to bring forward a recommended candidate to the Board of Selectmen at your February 11th meeting. And just to let everybody know that next Friday and Saturday, I'll be attending the Massachusetts Municipal Association Annual Conference in Boston on both Friday and Saturday, the 24th and 25th of January. Happy to answer any questions anybody has.
Any questions or comments?
Super.
All right, now we're going to take about a 35-second
Wait, I have an
moment of
idea.
silence.
Do you want to talk about the partnership with Eversource with some tree clearing?
Sure, I'd be happy to. I should have mentioned it in my report, and I'm happy to share that because of the efforts of Chief Holmes, Chief Douglas, and our acting superintendent of streets, trees, and parks, meeting with Eversource to address 3 streets in town, Indian Pond Estates, and I'm having a brain cramp, I apologize. Indian Pond Road, excuse me, South Street, and,
Ring Road?
Ring Road, thank you. Eversource has gone out, they spent a considerable amount of time with those 3 individuals from the town. Eversource is willing to come in, start removing trees as early as 2 or 3 weeks from now. That hasn't been finalized yet. These trees, or these roads, have been chosen because oftentimes in the wintertime during stormy weather, they've had trees or branches come down, closing the roads, cutting off electric power to the homes in those streets. So Eversource is going to come in, as I mentioned, and remove a number of trees on all of those 3 roads that in many cases would have had to have been removed from the town of Kingston, saving us a significant amount of money. So we appreciate Eversource's willingness to step up, address the issues that caused them reliability with their electricity and have caused concerns by public safety because they haven't been able to respond as efficiently as they can with the roads are closed to emergency calls and save the town of Kingston a significant amount of money if we were responsible for removing those trees. So Eversource is here tonight to place another pole, and just want to thank Eversource in person. The gentleman's going to stand up. He was the guy who did it all. It was unbelievable. I'm kidding. Just trying to give you some kudos. Just want to make the public aware. Eversource will be reaching out. There are trees on private property. They'll be reaching out to those property owners to seek permission. If there's any tree warden public hearing needs to occur, that will occur prior to the start of any tree work. And they're working with Streets, Trees, and Parks to address that if need be. But everybody who needs to be notified will be notified before the work begins. Excited to have that nice partnership back again with Eversource to try to address a safety issue on our part and a reliability issue on theirs. Thank you for bringing that up. Appreciate it.
There's not enough time for this, but at some point we should probably talk about whether or not the MBTA stuff that's been going on, so the emergency regulations that were just put in place, as well as the Milton court case, if it has any effect on Kingston. I don't believe it does, but I know that people have been talking about it, so it may be something that we want to just have someone speak to at some point.
Sounds good. Being 6:17, we finished a lot of stuff on our agenda for tonight, so this is good. We're moving quick. But now we're going to start our public hearing. It's a petition from Verizon New England, Incorporated, an N-Star Electric Company doing business as Eversource Energy, proposing to place new facilities on Maple Street. They're looking to install one mid-span pole on Maple Street, proposing to place new facilities, pole 119/1.5 on Maple Street. Interim Superintendent Sean Turner has spoken with Eversource and reviewed the request and has no objections. Abutter notifications were sent on 12/23/2024. Did I say the address wrong?
The general information is wrong, but the public hearing notice is right.
It's on Grove Street.
Yes, the
Right.
description, you can just, if you
Right.
just read the public hearing notice.
So I'll read the public hearing notice. Notice is hereby given that the Kingston Board of Selectmen will hold a public hearing on the petition, work order 19272420 from N-Star Electric Company doing business as Eversource Energy, requesting the installation of one new pole on Grove Street. N-Star Electric Company, DBA Eversource Energy, requests permission to locate and relocate poles, wires, cables, and fixtures, including the necessary sustaining and protecting fixtures to be owned and used in common by petitioners along and across the following public ways or ways. Install one new pole 23/1 on Grove Street. The hearing shall take place on Tuesday, January 14th, 2025, and the meeting will begin at 6:15 p.m. in room 200, the Townhouse, 26 Evergreen Street, Kingston, Mass. People interested are invited to attend and be heard in the matter. Would someone like to make a motion to open the public hearing?
I move the Board of Selectmen open the public hearing.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Eric, aye.
Tyler, aye?
Missy, aye.
Don, I.
All right, so I'll turn it over to Verizon or Eversource, sorry.
Hi, I'm Julie from Eversource, and as stated, we would like to install a new pole 23/1 in the right-of-way of Grove Street. And the purpose of this is that is a longer span that's going over the intersection. So this pole will help ensure to keep the new wires tight above the intersection. The end goal is to bring the primary over so that we can improve the circuits in this area.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Sean did approve of this. He
Yes.
said, okay. I just want to make sure that part was correct. Does anybody have any questions or comments?
This is near a location we've talked about in a prior meeting, where there was a pole placed directly in the center of someone's driveway. That's since been removed, and the paving has taken place. I was assured that was taken care of. So in case anyone on the board still had that in mind, this is a similar neighborhood to that issue, and it's been resolved. So
Okay.
I have no concerns.
All right, anybody else? No? Okay, would anybody like to make a motion?
I move the Board of Selectmen approve the request from NSTAR Electric Company doing business as Eversource Energy for the installation of one new pole on Grove Street to locate and relocate poles, wires, cables, and fixtures, including the necessary sustaining and protecting fixtures to be owned and used in common by their petitioners along and across the following public way or ways. And it says, install one new pole, number 23/1, on Grove Street.
Second.
All right, all those in favor, Eric, aye.
Tyler, aye.
Kim, I.
Missy, I.
Don, I.
All right, that's unanimous. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Have a nice night.
Too.
I move the Board of Selectmen close the public hearing.
Second.
All those in favor, Eric, aye.
Tyler, aye.
Kim, I.
Missy, I.
Don, I.
All right, we're done. Did I miss anything? I think we got all the appointments.
I think it's
We
just
just need to
Keith
do the
now.
budget.
Just that.
Okay, this is good. So right now, we're going to have a presentation from the town administrator's recommended fiscal year '26 budget. The detailed budget book will be distributed at the board meeting, which we have not seen yet. I don't know that we want to see it.
It's here.
It's here. It's here. It's right on that chair. We can certainly pass it out if you'd like. And I frankly have held off on handing it out until tonight so I could present the recommended budget and
Okay.
have you guys have the opportunity to hear the presentation before you start digging into the books themselves. Here. Thank you. Yeah, so, I'm here this evening to present the fiscal '26 budget to the Board of Selectmen. This budget meets the goal that was established by the Budget Advisory Committee back in October of no more than a, well, let me back up. I think ultimately the goal was to not have, present an initial budget to the Board of Selectmen that does not need a Proposition 2.5 override. This budget that I'm presenting this evening does that. The overall increase in the budget is about 4.12%. So I don't want to tell you it meets the 4% goal because it doesn't quite meet the 4% goal. There's a number of a lot of information included in the book. There's my transmittal memo, the detailed departmental budgets, the capital improvement plan for those who need it. There's some documents and some graphs and charts in there to help illustrate the impacts, the increases to departments, and how we're getting to where we're getting to. This budget could not have been brought forward this evening without the help and the support of the department heads. They understood the challenges that we're facing. They understand what the goal is to bring forward a budget that does not need a Proposition 2.5 override. They understand what the impacts of that are. We've tried to identify what the impacts of a budget without an override has on the existing services that are provided by the community to its residents. We've tried to identify what they are, and we'll go over those in this presentation. Tried to find areas that we could make service cuts that would not be significant to the taxpayers and residents of the community. There are some that, there is one specifically, I guess I would identify in the fire department that's going to impact service. And I'm sure either tonight or at some point when we're reviewing the budget, the fire chief will get up and speak in great detail to that, so you understand what the impacts are. In trying to address the shortcomings that Chief Holmes inherited in the police department budget, he had proposed some additional staffing, and a change in the organizational structure of the police department, as well as some training for his employees. There are no new positions proposed in the police department budget. A lot of the training that's been proposed in the police chief's budget has been removed. I've spoken to the board chair earlier tonight, who just to let him know that Chief Holmes would like to make a brief statement if he could tonight, so he's aware of that as well. But I think it's going to be obviously a challenging next couple of months, trying to identify whether or not a Proposition 2.5 is something that the board and the Finance Committee would support, and debate what that amount would be. So as I mentioned, my budget increases spending by 4.12%. There are impacts to, as I mentioned, the school, fire, and also transfer station department, and we'll get into those a little bit. The budget includes staff reductions in the school department. I don't know what those numbers are. At the Kingston School Committee meeting on Tuesday evening, and at the Silver Lake School Committee meeting on Thursday evening, they have proposed both a level service budget and a 4% in Kingston, I believe 4% for the Kingston schools, and I believe 2% increase for the Silver Lake schools. Those to get to those cuts, to that number anyways, the cuts would be fairly significant to staffing. But frankly, at this point, I don't have budgets that have been proposed and recommended by either school committee, so.
Can I ask a
Yeah,
quick question here?
sure.
I just want to interject. So we had asked all departments to come up with a 4% increase. Silver Lake came up with a 2%. Was that because, and I didn't get to watch their meeting, I was on vacation. Was the 2% at Silver Lake because of Plimpton or Halifax asking for that?
My understanding was the Silver Lake School Committee determined that they wanted to see a budget that had an overall increase of 2%. I don't know that it was driven by any one community specifically on that.
Thank you for
No problem at all.
for that.
So again, this is, and I appreciate Eric for bringing this up. The way I look at this process, it's a marathon, not a sprint. This is our first look at a budget meeting the goals that were established. It does impact a number of departments, and the board, the finance committee, the school committee will all have to work, hopefully collaboratively, to come up with a budget that everybody can support moving forward. So just to reflect, again, I present the budget this evening. The Board of Selectmen approved a schedule for our fiscal 26 town meeting in May. Our warrant closes the 26th of March. The Finance Committee has a public hearing that's tentatively scheduled for the week of April 8th, and town meeting this year is scheduled on Saturday, April 29th. I'm sorry? 26th. Thank you. So how did we come up with this budget? There were obviously assumptions that had to be made. We don't know what our state revenues are going to be. We don't know what our health insurance rate increases are going to be. We don't know what our property liability insurance increases are going to be. So there are assumptions that have been included in this budget. We do know what our salaries and what our estimated costs are for supplies and services that we've been able to accurately reflect in the budget. We've adjusted the budget to meet all the contractual wage adjustments for the 6 unions in town, as well as proposing a cost of living adjustment for wage and personnel employees consistent with the KTU employees, which is what the Finance Committee has typically used for a benchmark for wage and personnel of 2%. I've included an adjustment in spending to the Silver Lake and Kingston Elementary and Kingston Intermediate School budgets of 4%. I don't know if I mentioned it here, but I just want to point out The police department budget, understanding the challenges they're facing with staffing and training, I proposed a 6% increase in the Kingston Police Department budget and a 5% increase in the Kingston Fire Department budgets, understanding that the needs, the supplies, those types of things, but still remain at the 4.12% overall. So what does Article 3 look like? It's our operating budget. If the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee were supportive of the budget that has been prepared for them, we'd be looking to raise $61,551,000 for the general fund. So this year is going to be a little bit different because I don't believe there's been a Proposition 2.5 override proposal in Kingston for a number of years. There's been a debt exclusion override that's been proposed a couple of times and has been approved. So my suggestion, after talking to legal counsel about an option to present a Proposition 2.5 warrant article, if there was the support to do so, would be to have a Proposition 2.5 article that would identify one or more departments that were looking for that override that people supported with the recommended amount. That would allow for discussion and decision at town meeting on the total appropriation for the override, rather than having more than one override vote if there was a need to have more than one override vote. This is the warrant article language that was provided to me by legal counsel. So this is what the warrant article would look like if there was one moving forward, just to give people an example of what that might look like. And that would probably be Article 4, the article right after the operating budget warrant article. So this is what we know we have for warrant articles. Most of them are, and it's tough to read, I apologize, the font is not great. But right now, we're aware of 18 warrant articles. Some of them may not be needed. The Proposition 2.5 override article is in there, is Article 4 right now. The elementary school is the school department, is anticipating a warrant article to fund the roof repairs or replacement at the elementary school. That I assume would be a debt exclusion that would be proposed by the school department. If you recall, there was funds approved at the fall town meeting to have the school department do the due diligence and work with the Massachusetts School Building Association, which has awarded them a grant that has recently been 53% of the cost of the roof. 2 years ago in the capital plan, that roof was an estimated replacement cost, and it may not be replaced, but the estimated replacement cost they had moved forward with 2 years ago was about $4 million. So 53% of that is just over $2 million. So those are some ballpark numbers that at least we can start having some conversations with, but they're confident that the school department is confident that they will have some sort of a proposal to bring forward in the spring town meeting. The water and sewer department budgets, the renewable energy budget, wage and personnel, the capital improvement plan, again, is a draft number that's gone in front of the capital planning committee. And then the rest are either unknown or the typical articles that go forward at town meeting, funding reserve accounts and stabilization accounts. This list will change, certainly, in the next few months, but that's what we know of now. So just to kind of give people a sense of revenues, levy limits become a challenge for a couple of reasons. The town of Kingston had 2 years ago about $2.5 million in excess levy capacity. Fiscal 25's budget used a significant portion of that and dropped it down to $898,000. Fiscal 26's proposed budget would have an excess levy capacity as presented of $9,607. So we're right up against the levy capacity, which is not uncommon in a lot of communities, but it has been uncommon in Kingston for certainly for recent history. So the town of Kingston can spend about $1.5 million more than we could in or we can raise, excuse me, $1.5 million more in taxes than we could in fiscal '25. And we are challenged with our excess levy capacity moving forward.
And I think
Sure.
it's worth noting, as folks know, we have a lot of people who don't want to see growth in Kingston. And we've had some issues, obviously, with the moratorium with water. But our new growth estimated for '26 is incredibly low. It's 400,000. And that's one of the problems, that we don't have new developments going up. You can't have both. You can't keep our taxes low and not have growth. If we had more development going on, commercial or residential, that would offset some of the taxes. But without that growth, that means a higher burden on the rest of us here who are already paying. And I know there's been a lot of discussions about people seeing their sewer increases, water increases, tax increases from last year's town meeting. And what we're seeing this year is going to be even more challenging. And again, a lot of this is due to the lack of new growth. One of the things that we're hoping to see is more commercial growth, especially up at the mall. We recently had the MBTA vote, and not necessarily for housing, but and the folks who own the mall, the people who bought the mall, have reached out through social media, and they're going to have some information sessions over the next few weeks, trying to get some feedback from residents about what should be built there. And obviously, that would be hopefully mostly commercial and adding to our tax base without hitting and draining our resources, between police, fire, schools. Police and fire will still be busy with the commercial, but it won't hit our schools as hard. So this is the challenge that we're facing.
Yeah, and I've got a slide that identifies, where our property values, what buckets, so to speak, that they come from. Certainly we have residential, commercial, industrial.
Right.
There's a certain FinCom member who continues to stay on a pretty regular basis that, commercial growth is something we desperately need in Kingston, and I think it'll illustrate that pretty well. As the chair mentioned, hopefully with the new owners at the mall and some of the innovative things they want to do and the public hearings they're going to have to try to get some input from the community, that will be a very busy spot, again, as it was in the past. That will be the economic engine this community needs commercially to help burden the tax base.
And I think it's important to note, the mall at one point during its heyday was assessed at almost 100 million.
91 million.
And right now, we're down to about 9 million.
Yep.
So any development up there is obviously going to increase the value of that property and the assessment. So that'll be a big new growth for us.
Yeah, it's, we want to work well with them, and they seem to be
Right.
very sensitive to the concerns that Kingston residents have shown. With some of the feedback they've gotten already, they've been a very good corporate partner with the town. They've met with us as often as they have asked to get some feedback, some information, and determine what people seem to want
Right.
to see that mall reinvent itself into. So hopefully when we sit here a year from now, we'll have some really positive things to talk about with regards to the mall that will benefit the community as a whole, but also our operating budget moving forward.
But also, it's going to be probably 3 or 4 years before we're going to see the revenue from that. So between now and then, with the moratorium on residential building, we're going to have a tight couple of years ahead of us before we start to see, in my mind, any relief.
No question.
Yeah, so sorry.
No, that's fine. Our budget, the revenue comparison from last year, we're $2.4 million more than we were last year. A lot of that has to do with, the increase in revenues. We're estimating about roughly $100,000, which is conservative, in new state revenues coming from the cherry sheet. But we're losing $91,000 in some of our local revenues, building permits, things of that nature that we're having to reflect reductions in. So that's where we get the $4.2 So to try to maybe more clearly identify what the chairman just mentioned as far as growth goes, here's a chart of new growth for back, 12, 13 years. And you see in 2024, we had new growth of over $1.7 million. This year, we're estimating new growth of $400,000. What that means is, there's $1.3 million in property value that we would have had to be able to share our tax burden with is now gone. So the ability to try to balance a budget, we're basically $1.3 million behind the times from 2 years ago as far as being able to fund or appropriate a certain amount of money. So it's certainly going to be a challenge. It's not going to end in fiscal '26. The water situation that we're in is a multi-year wait at this point, and it's going to be a challenge over the next few years to try to bring forward budgets that meet the needs of the community and for the services they're used to having. Again, just to reflect excess levy capacity, the town of Kingston's had over $1 million in excess levy capacity, almost for the past 10 years. There's been a couple of years where it's been below that. This year is one of those. We're estimating excess levy capacity. It's not reflected here, but through 2025 of $800,000. We expect that to be, like I said, just over $9,000 if everything tracks the way it's presented this evening. So one of the things people have seen, and this is what I tried to illustrate, and I think what the chair was trying to identify, and I know it's not easy to see, and I apologize, I couldn't find a color scheme that contrasted each other enough, but the darkest blue on the bottom of each of these years reflects the residential property taxes in Kingston, or the residential property value, in Kingston. Commercial industrial is very, very small, I guess, in Kingston. And the challenge I think we face is if we're able to identify commercial tax growth in town that wouldn't put extra burdens on the community's resources with regards to primarily the cost to educate students, it would certainly increase the need for additional police, fire, and things of that nature. But the taxes they're going to pay will more than offset the additional costs associated with staffing public safety and other departments at an appropriate level. So Kingston has a fairly unique high percentage of just residential value in town. That's what makes years like this as challenging as it does, trying to find a way to balance the budget without impacting services. Again, actual revenues, we've got changes of $2.5 million, 2.4 of that is property taxes. Again, based on our Proposition 2.5, our ability to increase the taxes, we can only increase taxes obviously by a certain percentage. That's reflected here. They've gone up every year. As I mentioned, we've had to reduce some of the other revenue growth because of inactivity in the building department primarily. There are some revenues that we can massage a little bit. For example, motor vehicle excise tax, we're estimating the same amount in fiscal '26 as we are in '25. As the year goes on and we get a better feel for where we are there, we may be able to increase that estimated revenue, which would provide additional expenses. We could raise additional monies, put it that way, or reduce the tax burden of the taxpayer. So there's some flexibility that we're going to have as we work our way through this process. We've tried to be conservative with our estimates. Free cash. We have a starting balance after fall town meeting. If you recall, at fall town meeting, we approved, I believe, 3 separate warrant articles for improvements to the radio system and a couple others that dropped it from about $2.5 million in free cash to $2.129. These are the typical items that get removed from free cash. The $1.3 million is what's been proposed in the capital plan. I can frankly see some of that proposed expenses dropping a bit when the capital planning committee reviews that. I know that the town of Kingston has had a goal of about $1 million in free cash after items have been removed from that. So there, I'm sure will be some discussion amongst the capital planning committee and the finance committee about what's been proposed to be used out of free cash. And again, free cash amount, every year that gets certified by DOR, it's gone down a bit in 2024, again, because of the lack of activity and the lack of growth. Our estimated revenues, they're usually fairly conservative. The actual revenues that came in were lower than they typically have been. So that impacts our free cash amount. So I've included a debt exclusion slide here to just share that information with the board and the public. Right now, there are debt exclusions in fiscal 26's budget of $876,000. The townhouse, Silver Lake Regional School, the elementary school HVAC, and the senior center. In fiscal 26, that dropped to $780,000, and it drops to $469,000 in 2027 when all of the debt exceptions that have been approved will expire. As I mentioned earlier, I don't have an amount yet, but I do expect the school committee, Kingston School Committee, to have a debt exception warrant article in this spring's warrant for the elementary school roof repairs or replacement. So, any questions on revenues? I know I'm kind of going through this pretty quick, and I know it's a lot of numbers, which nobody's too excited to hear about, and I understand that. All this information will be online tomorrow. The budget will be online tomorrow as well. So, if people at home want to dig into some of this stuff, they'll be more than able to be able to do that. So, where are we for fiscal 26 and in comparison to fiscal 23, 24, and 25? Again, we've got a 4.43% budget increase departmentally. There are reductions after that for indirect cost reductions from the water and sewer departments and some other small reductions in the amount of money that we have to appropriate. You'll see that, again, general government's at a 2% increase, public safety's at 7.2%. As you work your way down through, the local and regional education budget's at 4%. And other departments are range between a reduction due to our retirement of long-term debt, and increases in employee benefits and insurance, which are estimates at this point.
You have Silver Lake at 4%, but did you say that they're
Their
looking
goal-
at 2%?
Their Silver Lake School Committee asked the superintendent's department to bring forward what a 2% budget would look like.
Okay. All right.
So
So you're keeping in 4% here for now?
I am, because
Yep.
I'm a little hesitant to show to show a 2% reduction, or I'm sorry, a 2% budget and
Yeah, and again, I haven't seen their meeting, so I don't have the background on it yet, but.
2 million over 2%. Order of magnitude.
That's easy, Carl.
So what was just mentioned was the presentation of the Silver Lake School Committee. Their level service budget was about $2 million more than a 2% budget increase would allow for. That budget increase right now, preliminary budget increase is, I don't remember the exact percentage, Carl, but it's over 10%. Is that fair?
Silver Lake, bottom line is about 7.5%.
Okay, 7.5.
Yeah.
They've already made 150K so-called reduction.
Oh, you can't hear him. Yeah.
Doris,
Sorry.
what was mentioned was Silver Lake's budget right now is about 7.5% increase.
Yep.
After they make certain reductions.
And Kingston is 1.7 million, the elementary,
Kingston's 1.7
7 million over the 4%.
4%. Yep.
Yeah.
If they move forward with the proposal of a level services,
Right.
right?
Yes.
Okay. And what was that, like 7 16%?
Right
that what they
now,
said?
right now, the Silver Lake budget, I don't have the exact percentage, but I want to say it's 16 point something percent of an increase. And again, it's what that equates to is about $1.7 million in additional cuts to get to 4% budget.
Okay.
Again, just a different way of showing the expenditure, the appropriation comparison, one department versus, departments versus
Right.
fiscal '25, shows that 4.12% increase. But does reflect all the operating budget costs. Unreserved fund balances remains fairly stable. So financially, the town of Kingston, I think, is still in pretty good shape overall. One of the things that I didn't include in the presentation that I should have, frankly, the impacts to town operations. I mentioned already that the fire department, with the help of the fire chief, has reduced his budget to get to a 5% increase. What that does is it reduces his sick leave overtime. What that means to operations, very generally, is if they have a firefighter who is either injured or out sick, oftentimes, what they will always do is they will fill that shift with somebody who is off that particular day and pay them overtime. They won't be able to do that the majority of the time. So oftentimes, if this budget is approved as presented, the fire shift will have 5 firefighters on a shift rather than 6. If you remember, the fire department increased staffing to 6 people on shift a couple of years ago. I believe fiscal '25 was the first year that was in place fully for the year. Fiscal '24, I think, was half a year. So they'll have a year and a half of 6 staff members. The reason for the increase was the increase in call volume. What that means is that if a third ambulance needs to be called out, oftentimes, if not all the time, if they're running with 5 guys, that will require mutual aid rather than a Kingston ambulance being called out to respond to that call. Again, it's less than ideal. I'm sure Chief Douglas will speak to that and the impact and the concerns he has about that. The fire department, as I mentioned, there was a request for a new deputy chief position, 3 new patrolmen. I'm sorry, police. Did I say fire? I apologize. The police department had requested additional staffing, a deputy police chief, 3 new patrolmen, and a dispatcher.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Are those in the next page under the consolidated revenue and expense estimates on the bottom under, you have a column, the third column is proposed department budgets, and it's right in that you have proposed town administrative budget. Your column is the 7% for
Yes.
police. Okay. And then the column to the left, the proposed department budgets are what?
The department's asked for.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Yep,
That makes
exactly.
sense. Yep. Okay, thank you.
So I think, this board, when they went through the process of hiring Chief Holmes, speaking to the recruiter and just doing their own due diligence, I think we all knew that the police department's current staffing levels were inadequate. Chief Holmes is trying to deal with that, and I'm sure he'll speak to it in much more detail and much more eloquently than I can. I guess I'm going to stop there and let him talk more about that. I think it'd be more appropriate. But those positions are not included. There's also requests for additional funding for training. Some additional training was funded as part of the fall town meeting warrant, but there's still additional training that the chief would like to see his officers take advantage of to make that department more effective and more efficient in the world of today's policing. The transfer station has currently 7 Saturdays that they're open to accept brush and chip brush. I'm proposing that the proposal is to cut that down to 3 Saturdays rather than 7. I'm also proposing to close the transfer station at 3:45 rather than 7:45 on a Monday night. Again, in talking to Streets, Trees, and Parks, there's not a lot of activity on Monday nights, so it doesn't impact a tremendous amount of people. People can go if they need to, certainly during the week, during the day, the days that they're open, on the weekends. I proposed a bottom line cut of $25,000 to the library. The library director was out last week. I spoke to the library library trustee chairperson last week to let them know they will bring forward what those proposed cuts may be. Ideally, I mean, I brought an example forward a couple months ago about closing the library on a second day. I think the library trustees trying to balance a budget with the constraints that they have and the requirements of trying to meet the state requirements for spending for the library, they'll be able to do that and try to be more creative in not impacting the library patrons any more than they have to. Those are the major impacts I have proposed to. Right now, we have a part-time assistant planner and a full-time building department admin. Because of the lack of building activity, what I'm proposing to do is combine the two positions, or frankly, eliminate the assistant planner position, assistant part-time planner position, and have the admin of the building department provide admin services as well, or support for the planning department as well. We would have, like we do with the zoning board, an employee to do the planning board agendas and minutes as a stipend, which is included and addressed in the budget. I'm sorry. I have a list in my, a list is in the transmittal memo. So you will have that information in the transmittal memo. I meant to include it in the presentation, and I obviously forgot to do that, so I apologize for that. Overall, to try to get to the 4%, I mean, obviously there's impacts to public safety, certainly, but the remaining impacts, I think, are overall fairly minimal to get to a budget that doesn't need an override. We as staff are looking forward to working with the board to bring forward and recommend a budget to the finance committee that is responsible, provides the services we need to try to provide, but also as affordable rate as we possibly can. And I'd be happy to answer any other questions anybody has.
So I think my question is, fire, police, and school are currently, right now, in terms of what their department heads are looking for, going to require an override unless they can cut it down to the budget numbers that you have in here. Do you believe that right now, police and fire are the only two departments within the town hall that will need an override? The cuts to the other departments, like you mentioned, the library, highway department, are those all, are the department heads okay with those proposed budgets?
I don't think anybody wants to see a reduction in the budget
Right.
they provided. However,
We could make it work.
I think we can make that work. And so
Okay.
in the largest cuts I'm proposing this evening are public safety cuts. And that really is primarily driven by the fact that most of the other departments in past years have seen, there's just nothing left to cut in some of these departments.
Right.
In all honesty, and again, the public safety cuts are not ideal, but I think everybody understands the challenges that we're facing locally with the issues
Right.
facing the community.
And we obviously are not going to be voting on a budget tonight. We don't need to make decisions tonight. But I know what I would like to see is, I would like to see from both fire and police, their original requests for what they need and what their cuts from those requests would have to be brought down to, basically, to get to your numbers. And then we would have to make a decision here as a board and also finance committee in terms of what sort of an override would be supported and for which line items.
So if you look at the police and fire, if you go under the police and fire tab, what you'll see is the last couple of years' budgets. You'll see the fiscal '26 requests from both the police chief and the fire chief.
Okay.
As you will see in every department budget. And then you'll see the budget amounts that should be further up in the book here.
Yeah, I'm looking at the capital.
It's alphabetically, the department budgets are alphabetical, so you'll see the adjustments to the department heads' requests by line item
Okay.
reflected in the budget.
Okay.
And again, it's, for fire, it's overtime for the most part. For police, it's staffing and training, I think, by and large. So, and they'd be happy, again, they are much more capable of answering the details on what those impacts will cause their departments in the community than I, but.
So do we want to hear from the police chief and the fire chief tonight?
We're going to have more questions than just those two budgets, so.
Yeah, so would,
And I think I'd like time to read this and look at it, and I don't know, if we may want to provide them questions in advance so that we can
So-
then share those questions.
do we, Keith had made a suggestion that maybe we try to schedule additional meetings more frequently over the coming weeks to discuss the budget. Obviously, this year is a huge challenge, both from the schools, but also here just because of revenues and our levy limit. Do we want to have a meeting again next week? We have a regular meeting scheduled 2 weeks from tonight. Do we want to meet again next week?
I'm fine with that.
I'm unavailable Tuesday, but you can have one without me.
We'll vote it without you.
Yeah, that's why there's
Well, I
five.
mean, we could discuss the majority of it.
Yeah.
And then you could always watch it and then
Yeah,
ask more questions and then vote at the
Yeah,
next
I
time.
mean, we're not going to be making decisions. I think what we're going to be doing is asking questions and trying to get to the meat of this.
I'm more, yeah, I'm more than happy with you guys going
I
forward
think
without me.
one thing we have to keep in mind, and Keith, thank you for bringing this up, this isn't just like I said, we talked about this last year, this wasn't a last year problem, this isn't just a this year problem.
No.
So 4% may get us under the levy limit this time. We'll be facing additional issues next year, trying to keep our budget underneath the levy limit, which will be a centimeter above where our spending is. So we have to look at this very critically, and we have to really be breaking down everything. So it requires a higher level of review, I think, on everybody's part. And Keith,
Right.
thank you for and all the department heads, thank you for all the work you've done thus far. I very much appreciate it. I think this is going to be very challenging for everyone.
And again, I don't mean to harp on this. We don't have school budgets. We aren't going to have school budgets
Right.
before the 28th of January, when the board has to potentially recommend a budget to the finance committee. In speaking to the school department earlier today, the school department doesn't have the Kingston School Department doesn't have another meeting until early February.
Right.
And Silver Lake doesn't have a meeting until mid-February.
And they have to have a public budget hearing, and that's in February, and that's where they get input, and that's when they, on my experience, I mean, usually have the first draft in January, getting a few cuts in February, and the final beginning of March. Again, I think we're gonna have to put some pressure on everybody involved, and I know it's tough. I mean, the increases last year and this year in the schools are incredibly tough. And we're also going to need to figure out and push back on the state in terms of funding a lot of the students coming from Baymont as well.
So I've tried to, with the help of the school department, we're trying to compile the number of students there, as well as, what the school department estimates for costs associated with having them there. And I think at that point, we can try to work with Representative Lenatra, our new senator, to try to have the Commonwealth fund better, or more adequately fund the costs associated with having, kids or families who are looking for more permanent shelters.
Right.
Have temporary shelter in Kingston.
So essentially, just to double down on this, so in 2 weeks, we would essentially be voting on a budget that isn't, because of our bylaws, we'd be voting on a budget approval, but we wouldn't have either school budget from Kingston or from Silver Lake School.
We
We're
can still
voting a
vote.
budget recommendation
Yeah, I mean,
for Finance Committee.
And I think more, and again, from my point of view anyways, a little more importantly, the overall question you've got to answer is, does the Board of Selectmen, because it's your recommendation, do you want to present or recommend a Proposition 2.5 override? That's your decision. In doing some homework on the Proposition 2.5, what I've learned is, which makes sense, the earlier that a decision is made on whether a Proposition 2.5 override is going to move forward or not, the earlier it's made public, and the more information you can provide the public as to why that Proposition 2.5 override is being requested, very closely correlates with the approval from the community of an override. So the concern I guess I have, I understand the school committee has certain timelines that they're meeting. The longer they take to ask the Board of Selectmen for an override, the concern is that the least chance or the lesser chance they have of actually approving. So, if they've got to meet different, additional times like the Board of Selectmen's going to meet to try to get that number to us, I think that's important to do. It's something that hasn't come forward in Kingston for a long time, and it's something I think people need to understand the need for, because they haven't faced it, and they've seen some pretty significant increases in their property taxes over the last couple of years, and for those who are on water and sewer, the same thing. So we've got to make sure that the public is aware of what these needs are and why.
And also that if the board, or if the public, because this ultimately gets voted in by town meeting, we recommend things and we vote on things and blah, 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 but at the end of the day, it's an individual vote at town meeting. So whether or not we recommend a Prop 2.5 override, or it gets voted into on the floor of town meeting, this what was presented tonight would be the fallback if that failed, either at town meeting. So if Prop 2.5 went to town meeting and failed there, or if it passed and it went to the ballot boxes, it has to go to the ballot. If it failed there, we would revert back to the budget that we're being presented to tonight, which is the bare bones operating budget. It would still need to be passed at town meeting, but it would be our foundational fallback if everything else, if all else fails.
One thing that I want to mention as well, in talking to legal counsel a little bit, and just trying to frankly save some money and reduce the times people have to go vote, we've got to, the town has to present an override, an approved override to be placed on a ballot at least 35 days before the election. So sometime in April, a decision will have to be made, and what that would allow for is when you go to the ballot, when you go to vote for your elected officials locally, you'll also have the ability, if it moves forward, to vote on a debt exclusion article for the roof and a Proposition 2.5 funding article for the budget. So there would just need to be one election this spring to address all three topics, if those topics all move forward.
And correct me if I'm wrong, if we need to vote a budget earlier, we can vote a budget and we can vote an override. Can't we just throw any number at it and say $400,000 override for police, fire, schools, and then amend that vote before, at whatever point we need to? If the schools don't come in, the state, the governor, and could come up with higher aid for regional transportation. And this is what happens. It changes the budget, the school budgets drastically.
Sure.
So the need for an override could go up or down. It could go either direction.
So the only thing I'd want to verify is if the Board of Selectmen voted to have an override article on the warrant, could they amend the amount
Yeah.
within that 35-day window that we're talking about? I just would want to
And
verify
I would
that.
assume we would have, the schools would have a budget at the latest. I mean, in my experience, it was always usually March. You know, by mid-March, they would have a budget voted. But if we're trying to vote before then, but you're saying that we could have until April to
So-
vote an override amount.
So the state law requires 35 days, so say 36, just to have
Right.
that one clear day. So again, I haven't done the math, but if you're talking about mid-April
Yeah.
for a final decision, again, the concern about waiting that long, I think, is not providing enough information for the
Right,
voters to be
right.
able to understand why we're doing what we're doing.
Right. Okay. I mean, I know I want to hear from fire chief and police chief about, you know, their wants and needs above your recommended budget.
If you
I-
feel like they're prepared to speak about it, then fine, but
Or if we want to
otherwise-
wait until next week or the week after, I'm fine with that as well. I feel like we're okay from a time perspective. I don't think we necessarily have to do it tonight.
So just
Am I right?
before the board makes a decision on when, if they want to meet next week, just to remind you, Monday's a holiday, we can still meet if you want.
Yeah.
Tuesday, the room's available, this room's available, and
Okay.
Thursday, this room's available. Wednesday, there's a board or committee that is already scheduled, so your choices are Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday.
So I guess the question before the board right now is, do we want to add another meeting next Tuesday, or do we feel like we can wait 2 weeks? What's everyone's thoughts? I would like to go through this. I know I'm going to have questions. I'm going to write down a list of my questions, and I think we should provide it to whatever department head we need to get them to, get it to them ahead of time, so that they have an opportunity to prepare.
Yeah, and if I can't be there Tuesday, and Tuesday is much more of the question and answer time, I can provide those before. I can just give those to you, Eric.
Yeah.
Yeah, if board members have the opportunity to review the budget prior to whenever you decide to meet, if you can get the questions, either Chief Holmes or Douglas, or me the questions for the other departments, we can get those answered for you, get them back to you prior to the meeting, so you
Yeah.
have some time to digest those answers, and we'll distribute them out and make sure everybody has them to review and
So our next meeting is, our next
28th.
regular meeting is the 28th. Does the board feel comfortable waiting until the 28th, or do you want to have the meeting next week? Any thoughts?
I'm good
Either way.
I don't think we've ever had a time when we needed to do two, but maybe I was wrong. Pretty sure we did them all in one meeting.
We
last
did.
time.
Again, the big difference, the elephant in the room, frankly, is the Proposition 2.5 discussion.
Yeah, and with the schools, I think, and we're just not going to get the information from them. But I think we can still make our decisions based on all the other departments.
We're gonna need a lot of information in 2 nights from now as well. Well,
Yeah,
presumably.
correct.
There'll be a lot of information coming out on Thursday night. when we
That
have
is
our- when we have our
correct.
joint meeting as well.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not opposed to having a meeting next week. If we feel, I guess it's easier to have one next week and get it done in one meeting than if we wait till the 28th and it turns out we needed a second meeting if we don't do it.
Right.
I just don't know if the board's going to have time to digest. There's some significant policy decisions that the board's going to have to make, specifically regarding the police and fire budgets.
Right.
And
let's do it next week, so then we can have the conversations with the departments. If you guys are available a week from tonight?
yes.
Talk about it.
I would like,
That's fine.
that would be helpful for me, for sure.
Do you want him to go to the microphone?
Say that.
You're getting the knock and pointing in the window.
Yeah, I'd say go ahead.
Yes, no?
Do you want the,
Is it on?
do you want this?
Yeah, no glasses, not sure on the button.
Do you want my magnifying glass?
Thanks a bunch.
Everyone's laughing at me, but
One of the things Keith and I did when we talked about our budget was I really isolated the cut to one area. Not that I wouldn't have to make some adjustments along the way, but it was just easier to have a discussion about the one area of staffing that we reduced. Typically, as the year goes on with us, we move a little bit in the personnel services line around to cover wherever the necessity is. For example, as your call volume increases, your double and triple simultaneous calls increases, sometimes we'll have to float some money from, say, sick fill to recall, stuff like that. We do that within the budget on a regular basis. The easiest way to do it when we spoke about this was to isolate this to sick fill. Over the past couple of years, we've had a very unusual amount of sick fill expenditure. I think you'll see in the budget it was something like $256,000. 2 firefighters were injured very severely, both requiring surgery. 3 actually, 1 will retire. 2 are coming back. So that puts a pretty significant burden. When you combine that with the increased call volume, in other words, less people to do more calls than they were doing even the year before, it starts to stretch staff very thin. That said, and I'll provide some statistics and some more depth of information on this, that said, what this decrease does is decrease staffing. It's that simple. It doesn't remove bodies, it doesn't lay people off, but when people are sick, when they're injured, or when we have some other complications, you're not able to fill those shifts. What does that mean? One of 2 things. Either you use mutual aid a lot. Now keep in mind, as Keith has pointed out, I think very well, we're not the only town suffering from this. Duxbury, as an example, is having conversations about laying off 39 people. Police and fire are included. So with all of that in our surrounding towns, mutual aid gets thinner and thinner as far as its availability. So those are some of the impacts that you'll see regionally. And what's that translate to without a lot of drama? Very simple. Increased call response times. It's that simple. It's going to take you longer to get a fire truck or an ambulance. It may or may not say Kingston on it when it arrives, but whatever vehicle shows up, it's going to take longer to arrive. And that's just, without drama, a simple fact. And I'm sure that that is public safety across the region. We as fire chiefs meet on a fairly regular basis. We have these discussions because this is such a popular, or unpopular, if you will, topic right now. And I think I can speak regionally that this is the biggest concern. Recognizing all of the things that play into this, the best or the worst area, however you want to explain this mess, to take money from is personnel. But the cost of keeping the lights on is the cost of keeping the lights on. It's supplies cost X, equipment cost X. So on the expense side, I think we're up, Keith, correct me, 3.71 as far as our expenses. So we kept that very tight. Primarily, the reason for the increases was the ambulance billing. With the additional staff, you can equate that to revenue as well. As of today, we're at $1,698,000 for ambulance revenue this year. When you reduce staff, reduce the number of calls you do, you reduce the amount of revenue. So it's a delicate balancing act on the business side. But the most concerning thing for a fire chief is going to be the response. So that generally frames it. I will have a ton of statistics for you, and it's pages and pages that come off our CAD. It's very simple, easy to understand statistics for you, and I'll provide that hopefully in advance of next week's meeting. Okay. Maybe Keith can get those out to you so you can develop some questions from those.
okay.
Just, Mark, to add to that, I know that recently there was a house fire that took a matter of minutes to go from ashes to the house is gone.
Exactly.
So I just want to make sure that people understand longer response times
So,
really matter.
again, and one of the things that I try to avoid very aggressively is over-dramatizing situations. But the fact is the fact. You know, we had a full staff that night. They got to work, excuse me, very quickly that night, but the residents had self-evacuated. I arrived, and within 3 minutes of arriving at the fire, I pulled everybody out of the building because we had heavy fire in the attic. 5 minutes from that, the attic started to collapse. So minutes count. They look like numbers on paper, but when you talk about stuff like that, minutes count. Now let's think about it this way. The person didn't self-extricate or self-evacuate. I had 2 guys tied up on an ambulance call. That makes it a very, very different scenario. So those, again, I hate drama, and I'm sorry for that, but that's
Right.
just simply the reality. So if there's any questions, again, feel free. I'll provide a ton of statistics, and feel free to rip them apart and try to understand them.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Chief, do you need these, or you're good? The pages that he gave us for police?
I got them, thanks. Now, this is very preliminary, just to give you context about where I am in my own mind about what the department should look like in terms of staffing. I did have a preliminary discussion with Chairman Crone about getting on the agenda for a couple of weeks out and asking the board to give me a non-binding agreement for what the growth plan should look like so that we can plan. But I think that all of that is even premature, given where we are with, you know, the unknown number with the school, all roads leading to a 2.5 override, the struggle of the need for proliferation of personnel, while at the same time not looking to be exploitive of a 2.5 override. So the department is structured right now that it's got 6 sergeants, 2 lieutenants, and 15 patrolmen. By the time, hopefully, these 2 gentlemen you met tonight graduate, we'll be at 17. Without putting, you know, thinning out the numbers and putting the personnel on shift, you have a ratio of 2 officers about to 1 supervisor. That's incredibly low for patrol staff. Ideally, you want it to be 3. It's going to take a while to get there. You know, it's apparent from the process I was brought in here as an agent of change. With that comes a growth plan, succession planning, and all that kind of thing. I appreciate the work that Keith and Kathleen have done with Laura and I. We're looking at basically an increase of about $5.1 million just to keep us alive, or closer more to $5.4 million, to get to 3 1-1, 3 patrol officers, 1 dispatcher, and 1 deputy chief of police. You're looking at an increase of about 22%, or 6.246. I don't take these numbers lightly. I'm a taxpayer in my town. I'm close to 10 grand a year in property taxes, not counting water, sewer, and other things, so I can relate. All of this stuff is expensive. I appreciate the town's support with the increases for the growth in staffing. I mean, the training requests. You know, I did provide a lot of information to the town administrator about what kind of stuff we're going to be sending the people on the department to, and what the training stuff will be used to staff. So, you know, there's also some potential growth that we haven't accounted for yet, and that some of the members of the department are capitalizing on education incentive program. When they get their degree, they're going to be looking at a salary increase. So that hasn't even been accounted for yet. Like I said, I don't take any of this lightly. I think it's premature for like the non-binding growth plan. And you know, I'm happy to answer any questions about what we're looking for. The board did previously authorize me to look at alternative funding sources. U.S. COPS grant, Department of Justice, they're not open yet. As soon as they are, I'll hit the go button. But that's not sustainable growth. That's growth for half funding for 3 years. Yeah. Sustainable growth means the town's budgeted for 100% funding for those positions, notwithstanding the understanding that some of that will be a turn back at the end of the fiscal year. So, you know, there are other alternate funding sources we're still looking at. And, you know, again, this is just a preliminary talk to give some context. If you're looking for comparables and all that kind of thing, you know, I would, you know, I think it's understandable that you would articulate all of that before another meeting about what exactly it is you're looking for. And I'm happy to get that. I've already started working on comparables for staffing for similar communities like us. Yeah. So, with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
The questions I have are going to be similar for all of the departments. So as I go through this, I look at what have we done in the past? What have we
Right.
spent? What have we needed? And what is it for? So if that's not clear, that's going to probably be my questions when we come to the budget meeting next week, I guess.
Right.
So, just for everyone, if there are significant differences between 2 years ago, last year, this year, or differences between what you're asking for versus what the town administrator is recommending, that's primarily where my questions will be, for me, so to prepare yourself for that.
And yeah, and to dovetail off that a little bit, if they're more in that 20-year, differential, like 20 years ago, things should have changed. I mean, to see that as well, I think for that, and we've had conversations about this, you've told me that you were going to bring this up, which is, other towns and comparable towns and what they're doing. Because it's almost, if the ratio is off by that much over a 20-year period, to look at 2 or 3 years back may or may not be as helpful. And so that's
fair.
Yeah.
That's fair.
And I don't know,
Yeah, that's fair.
That's just from seeing kind of through the looking glass of the past, year. So alternately having that as some metrics to look off of is going to be really helpful as well.
Right, this is the reason why I'm looking at it this
Right.
way.
Yeah.
And
Yes,
we're
that's
looking at a
fair.
lot more calls over at the apartments,
Sure.
at Baymont. But those apartments are new, and they're keeping you guys busy as well.
23.88% increase in calls from 2023 to 2024.
Right.
I'm
That's not
wondering,
That's not small.
no, I'm wondering when someone's going to reach out to Her Excellency, the governor, and say, what are you going to do to help communities
Right.
that have, shelters? I mean, it's a tough
Unfunded
question.
mandates are absolutely destroying municipalities, cities
Yep.
in this state, and people need to be held accountable.
Right.
And the governor needs to know that. And so I'll be the first to say it. This has trickled down from federal government to state
Yep.
government, and now we're the ones trekking through crap because of their mismanagement through many, many years, through many administrations. It's not one person I'm looking at, it's not one president I'm looking at, it's not one governor I'm looking at, but this is actually real life. When
Yeah.
municipalities, a town of 14,000, is picking up the loose change in money, we can't fund, ambulances, we can't fund getting up to standard with police or schools. And part of the reason is because of federal mismanagement, state mismanagement. That's insane. I'm not going to sit here and say it's not. So and sometimes we say the big problems, we blame the federal, we blame the state. This is one of those ones we can actually look at them and say, yeah, you are to blame for it. And they should be held accountable, and we got to figure out a way to get around it. We can't just sit here, and we're not activists, we're elected to be up here, and you guys are hired to be out there, and we have to do what we have to do. But this is an absolute disgrace from mismanagement from the up high, and when we're talking about not being able to get an ambulance because of 2 minutes, that 2 minutes is directly related to, unfunded mandates for shelters, unfunded mandates for schools, and a lot of other things that have piled up over the years. So,
I agree. I mean, the risk that you run by even bringing it up is partisan politics. I'm not getting into any of that. I'm saying that my priority is the safety of the cops on the street and the calls that we're going to. And I know that the board recognizes that priority as well.
And to be fair, he did say multiple administrations, so I think he was trying to cover the blanket of.
oh, yeah,
purpose.
no, a lot of people have sucked for a long time.
That was going to make it into the
And
paper.
I'm not saying in this room, but,
I should go sit down now. Thanks for recognizing.
sorry to get you in trouble, Chief.
All right, thank you, Chief. And you both are available for next Tuesday, the 21st? All right.
So I'd like to see if we can have an executive session on next Tuesday as well, ideally prior to the meeting, to just discuss some legal strategy. I don't know if the board is open to meeting, what time the board would be available to start a meeting next Tuesday night.
I would be available at 5:30. Actually, I'd probably be available at 5.
Doesn't matter to me, I'm going to try to have
5 or
legal
5:30.
legal counsel there.
Either. I know you're not available. Dawn, would you be available at 5?
He had to go at
Oh, that's right.
I have interviews until 6.
Okay.
So we might have to do the executive
That's fine,
after.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's
Sorry,
fine.
No, it's fine. You'll just stay later.
it is what it is.
It is.
Thank you.
3, and, whenever we.
Okay. Should we post the executive for 7?
Yeah, we'll post it for, say, 7 o'clock, and if we start after that, we can start after that.
Yeah.
That's not a problem.
Yeah.
We just can't start before.
Can we add minutes to to that agenda, please? Thank you.
Okay, so I think we're good. So we have that meeting for the 21st.
Okay, thank you.
As well as our regular meeting for the 28th. We are meeting this Thursday with the Silver Lakes School Committee, Halifax and Plimpton,
16th.
the 16th. Is that, I don't remember if they're,
Here.
is it,
It's
it's
in
here?
room 200 here.
So we will be via Zoom as well.
It will be, and
Yep.
that's why we're having it here, to meet.
Yep,
So,
okay, perfect.
what I think the other communities are doing, I just want to make sure the board is comfortable with this, is having the chair of the FinCom, the chair of the Board of Selectmen sitting at the head table, so to speak. Other board members who want to attend and be in the audience, we're trying to reserve the first 2 or 3 rows, and people can get in and have a conversation. So if people are comfortable with that, that's what we're going to try to do. We've spoken to PAC TV, they're going to include some additional microphones and try to make this as effective
Okay.
as possible. Thank you.
Sounds like a plan. And with that, I think we've covered everything. Any final thoughts from any board members? Tyler?
Nope.
Any comments?
Everyone needs to get town meeting on their calendar, Saturday, the 26th of April.
Right.
Put it in your calendar. Tell everyone, because I'm tired of everyone complaining, they don't know when it is. Saturday, April 26th.
Anything from you, Missy?
No.
Nope. Nothing from me either. I will entertain a motion to
I'll make a
adjourn.
motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, all those in favor, Eric, aye.
Tyler, aye.
Kim, I.
Missy, aye.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.